Suffolk City School Board will come to order. We will now entertain our work session topic, proposed bus tier school schedule changes. Dr. Whitney.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to the podium Drs. Rice and Harrison to present to you a proposed bus tier school schedule change. You may recall, I'm certain you recall, that we've changed the bus schedules maybe a few years ago, but the primary goal for this change, as you'll see, is to make certain that students are getting to school on time and that we utilize the drivers that we do have to the best as we can. I'll turn it over now to the presenters. Dr. Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Whitney. Vice Chairman Copeland, board members, good afternoon. Dr. Harris and I are going to tag team this proposal to you on the bus tier and schedule changes. So what we have on the screen right now is the current bus tiers that we have in existence, and I believe this has been in effect for 4, maybe 5 years. The middle schools are on Tier 1, the high schools are on Tier 2, and then as you can see there, we've split the elementaries into a Tier 3 and a Tier 4. If you'll notice the difference between the bus arrivals, the start of school day and the school dismissal times, you'll notice that between Tier 1 and Tier 2, you have a nice 1-hour difference there. 2 o'clock, for example, and 3 o'clock at dismissal time. But then when you look at Tier 3, those drivers that are going on to the elementary A only have 35 minutes to drop those students off or pick those students up and get them to that Tier A school. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later, but that's one of the issues that we have with this 4-tier current system that we have. What we'd like to propose to you all is a 3-tier system. In this particular system, we're going to look at having all the middle schools, again, still on Tier 1. That would include Turlington Woods and CSEP. And then 1 hour later, you'll have Tier 2, and we'd like to combine all the elementary schools. So we'd have elementary in Tier 2. And then on the 3rd tier, we'd like to have the high schools, and the high schools will be last then. So what you can see is a very distinct 1-hour difference between all of these, except for the school start time for the elementary, and Dr. Harrison's going to talk a little bit about the difference there. These are the advantages from a transportation's point of view, so I'm going to be representing that. As I've mentioned earlier, the current tiers do not allow enough time between that 2nd tier or the high school runs and the elementary A tier. There's just 35 minutes and 50 minutes. There's just not enough time to turn around, either to drop kids off and get to the next school or get to that school to pick up in the afternoon. The new proposal, we have 1 hour between tiers, which does allow more time, and that means we're going to have more on-time arrivals. And I have a couple of stats for you to kind of show how this will help with the 1 hour. Also in this new proposal, you'll see that the elementary students will be getting home earlier in the afternoon. As I'm sure most of you are aware, that's been a consistent concern with most of our parents, is that when we do have any late runs, those children are getting home after dark when it's this time of year, 5:30. Hopefully not too much later than that, but that's unfortunately what's been happening. Also in the new proposal, you'll see that the high school tier, well, you don't see that, but the high school tier requires fewer drivers. We need 128 drivers for elementary. How do I go back? And so the first tier, the middle school, I think we need 117 drivers. The second tier there, we need all 128. The 3rd tier, I can't require the number, but it's much less than 128. So what this does is it frees up drivers on that high school run to be available to do all those activity runs for all the athletics that we have after school. Right now we're running short on that because those elementary runs require all the drivers, so we have to wait for all of the elementary runs to be done before we can secure a bus for any of the activities for the high schools. So right now, unfortunately, we have late buses to get the children to where they need to be for athletic events or any other activities. Any questions about that portion? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I understand the research about older children getting home, but I remember as we had our sessions in the neighborhoods with parents, one of their concerns was that the younger children were getting home before the older children, and for some parents, it's a matter of childcare. Are we going to, or are we thinking about, concerned about having some options with regard to some of these schools where we don't have a daycare after school?
The elementary schools that don't
Yes,
have,
for
all of them have
elementary.
some sort of after-school care.
Okay,
Every single one.
okay.
And if I might share this one stat with you that for the month of November, in the current system between Tier 1 and Tier 2, where we had that built-in 1 hour, we had 0 double runs, late arrivals, if you will. I don't mean to say double runs, but late arrivals. In between Tier 2, that high school run, and the elementary, we had 36 late runs in the morning and 50 late runs in the afternoon. So that data right there just shows you that it's almost impossible, and I'll go back again to show you the current.
Right.
That between Tier 2 and Tier 3, it's nearly impossible to have on-time runs, especially in the afternoon when the dismissal time at the high school is 3 o'clock, and then they have to drop all their high school students off and be at that elementary A by 3:35. It's just not feasible. So,
Dr. Rice?
yes, ma'am.
When would these changes go into effect?
I believe we're looking at this fall.
Oh, okay, so the next school year, not in
Yes,
January?
that's correct.
Okay, okay. I didn't think so. I was
Oh, yeah,
just-
no.
Okay, all right.
Definitely the fall.
Dr. Rice, when we went to the 4 tiers, wasn't the reason was because we didn't have enough buses and enough drivers?
Enough drivers, and that's actually correct. And what this does is it doesn't really lessen that. We need the most at elementary. So, and I'll be honest with you, right now we have 121 drivers. We need 128 permanent. We have 6 subs in the pool right now. 3 of those are on assigned runs, dedicated runs. The other 3 are floaters. So really, we're not going to ever be truly 100% efficient until we get 128 drivers and a larger pool of subs. We're currently keeping folks in the training line, but they end up leaving us after some point. So that's the unfortunate part about that. But yeah, we need 128 drivers to be efficient. And then we also need the drivers to show up to work every day. Because right now our average daily attendance in November was 111 drivers.
Wasn't part of the cost-saving measure was to reduce the number of buses and drivers that we needed?
I wasn't involved with that conversation to begin with, but I know initially we were 2 tiers. And I think that's what the conversation was, moving from 2 tiers to, I believe it was 3 to begin with, and then they went to this 4th tier. And Dr. Whitney, you might want to answer that because I wasn't involved at that point. I was still in the building.
It wasn't so much cost savings. It really was a matter of thinking that the drivers would be able to do additional runs, the same drivers that we have, but it simply didn't work out when you have shorter, lower number of drivers.
I have another question. Are we still, you're saying we need 128
Yes, ma'am.
drivers to be fully staffed?
Right.
And I know we're in a process of always training. Are we still giving bonuses for good attendance and safety and all?
Yes, we still have that implemented, and in fact, Dr. Rice, you want to share that program, or maybe Mr. Baldwin, as far as the bonus being given?
Sure. As far as the safety bonus is concerned, they have a rubric that they're following as far as no accidents, tickets, things of that nature. Attendance is, we've broken it into semesters. And is Mr. Baldwin here? Yes. Is it 500 first? So if they miss less than 5 days the first semester, they get a $500 bonus. If they miss less than 5 days in that second semester, they get another bonus. And the reason we choose those numbers is because they earn 10 sick leave days a year. So we figure it's fair to allow them to use what they've earned, but we'd like them to stay at it or below that in order to get the bonus.
How many drivers taking advantage of the bonuses?
Well, we don't know yet. We haven't gotten to the end of the first
Oh,
semester,
okay.
so I'm sure Mr. Baldwin is tracking that. 30? 30 have perfect attendance thus far.
Oh, great.
So that's fabulous. And we'll certainly recognize them beyond a bonus if they continue with perfect attendance.
We need to have them come before the school
Oh, the
board
board,
to be
absolutely,
recognized
be
for
That's a
that.
great idea. That's a great
Yes.
idea. All right, any other questions about the transportation portion of it? All right, Dr. Harrison?
Rice, and good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to just sort of pick up where Dr. Rice left off and share a little bit more about the benefits to the proposed schedule for high school students, and then I'll share with you some of the changes for elementary students. So research shows that there are many benefits to later start times for high school students, including increased attendance rates, an increase in academic performance, decreases in disciplinary action, and also decreases in student-involved car accidents. So again, the later start time for high school students, research really supports the benefits of that. But what I really wanted to focus on for this portion of the presentation is the increase in time for elementary students. So what we are proposing with the new schedule, we are proposing adding 10 additional minutes to the elementary school day. Currently, our elementary students are in school 6 hours and 15 minutes, and that amounts to 5 hours and 35 minutes of instructional time, compared to our secondary schools, which are in school 6 hours and 35 minutes, which amounts to about 6 hours and 5 minutes of instructional time. So with the proposal with the new tiers, one of the advantages with the new tiered system is that it does allow us to slightly increase the instructional time for our elementary students. And with the times that Dr. Rice just shared, that would give us 6 hours and 25 minutes for the school day for the elementary students, which amounts to 5 hours and 45 minutes of instructional time. And I wanted to just kind of highlight some of the benefits of adding additional time for elementary students. So of course, our students could benefit from the additional instructional time that the new schedule would allow. In addition to that, teachers would benefit from additional planning time. The way that the new time would be utilized would allow us to structure the school day such that our teachers would have about 10 additional minutes of planning time. This also would provide additional time in the school calendar. I'm sure you may be aware that for the elementary students, the school calendar is usually pretty compressed, and there are very limited options for teacher work days and planning days and so forth. And then also when it comes to makeup days, often the elementary students will have more time to make up because there are fewer banked days usually for elementary students. So the 10 additional minutes provides approximately 36 additional hours of instruction in the school year, which amounts to about 6 additional bank days, and that's above and beyond the 990 hours that are required by the state. And so that gives a little more flexibility at the elementary level, and I'm basing that off of the current draft calendar that the calendar committee has worked on for the 2018-19 school year. So that is an average based on that draft calendar that we are working on. And then again, it would provide more half days for teacher planning and record keeping at the elementary level. So typically, the high school teachers and middle school teachers have many more opportunities for teacher work days and planning days than the elementary teachers. So this would balance that out in the school calendar, where we would be able to offer those opportunities to both elementary and secondary teachers. And so that actually concludes our presentation. I wanted to open it back up for additional questions regarding the added time for elementary students.
Before we take questions, I would like to share our next step would like to be, if you're in support of us moving forward, is to obviously post this so that we can get some parent input, and we can also solicit for input by way of online, or parents could contact us in any manner possible. But we also want to have this added to the January 11th input session that we already have for rezoning. So it'll be in addition to the rezoning input, they can also provide input for the calendar change as well, or the time change as well.
I think I'll be absent that day.
You're kidding.
No, I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. I mean, I am kidding.
Oh.
That sounds like, oh boy. It's going to be fun.
Be biting off a lot. I mean, to be doing rezoning and changing school times at the same time, I could understand the rationale, but it just seems to me that we're going to open ourselves up for a whole lot of trouble.
Well, we had much discussion about that, and the thought was to do it all at the same time if we're going to do it, in the event that students are rezoned to a new school in addition to the new time, as opposed to 1 year the new school, and then the following year it's a new time at that new school. But we did have much discussion about that.
I think it's a great idea to get it over with. Gee.
Do it at one time. Any other question?
Dr. Harrison, with adding the 6 bank days for inclement weather to the elementary schools, are there additional bank days with the high schools in addition to the 2 bank days?
Yes, so with the high school calendar, or with the school calendar at the high school level, typically they have approximately 9 additional days beyond the 6. The hours are so different between elementary and secondary. Just to give you an example, secondary schools in the draft calendar would have about 1,083 hours of instruction compared to 1,026 hours of instruction. So there would be about 57 additional hours of instruction at the secondary level. And so that allows for more bank days at the secondary level than elementary.
So if you're wondering, in years past when we've had to make up days, it was primarily all levels would make up the time that the elementary was short. High school wasn't short necessarily, but elementary were.
If I can just add one additional clarifying point, one of the reasons for the discrepancy is that elementary schools have recess, and so that 15 minutes that's taken out for recess is taken out of the school day. It's taken out of the instructional time, so that's part of the reason why there's such a disparity between secondary and elementary.
Elementary still have their recess, right?
They'll absolutely still have recess.
But we have 10 more minutes of instruction, so
And
we'll be
part of
only
the,
taking 5 minutes out of the day.
what's that?
It will only be taking 5 minutes out of the day. We give them 15 minutes to play, and they'll now have 10 more minutes to work. Is that what we're doing?
Oh, no, they already have 15 minutes.
They have
15 minutes
15
now.
minutes.
That's the
Right,
current.
they have the 15, right, and so we're adding another 10 of instruction.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Mr. Superintendent.
That concludes the work session portion, yes.
All right, now we'll go into a closed session. Attorney Waller?
Motion is needed to go into a closed meeting to discuss the following items and subjects pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia 1958 as amended. The discussion and/or consideration of the personnel report regarding specific individuals relative to employment of prospective candidates, resignations, appointments, promotions, evaluations, and disciplining of specific employees of the school board. And number 2, the discussion and/or consideration of the pupil personnel report relative to out-of-zone requests and disciplinary matters regarding specific students enrolled in Suffolk Public Schools, where the discussion in open meeting would involve the disclosure of information contained in the student's scholastic record, all of which is authorized by Section 2.2-3711, 1 and 2 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended.
So move.
Second.
Board Member Bouchard,
Yes.
Board Member Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Board Member Byram,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Skeeter,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Copeland.
Aye.
Motion carried.
We'll now have, go into closed session. We will return at 6:30 for community input regarding proposed rezoning at 6:30. Thank you.